The last resident of a housing estate due to be demolished has said the council will need to double its offer to get him to leave. Nick Wisniewski has had no neighbours in his block on the Goththrapple housing estate in Wishaw, North Lanarkshire since December. The 66-year-old wants at least £80,000 so he can afford to buy a new flat. But North Lanarkshire Council said they could not pay Mr Withingshire more than the property was worth. The retired bank worker bought the flat in Stanhope Place several years ago under the Right to Buy scheme, which helped council tenants buy their homes at discounted rates. The scheme has since been closed in Scotland. I've been here for 21 years and I'm settled, he told BBC Scotland. I've looked at prices of houses roundabout. For a 2-bedroom flat, you're talking anything between £80,000 to £100,000. I finished up with the bank, I took my redundancy, but I'm not prepared to make myself skint because of North Lanarkshire Council. He's said that the council had offered him £35,000 for his flat, along with 2 years of free rent at a new council property. The authority is planning to redevelop the whole Goththrapple estate, replacing ageing housing and creating an attractive and well-connected new neighbourhood. Work on other parts of the estate has already begun. He's told the BBC Scotland he was not willing to move into a new rented council property, but wanted to buy a new place. I'm too old for this, he said. I don't want a lot of hassle in my life, I just want to take it easy. That's why I would prefer to just move out and into somewhere I could buy. He said he had not heard from North Lanarkshire Council since last November and had been waiting to hear from the authority with an improved offer. If they gave me £35,000, I could easily put £20,000 to it, which is not nearly enough. So really they need to double the offer for me to get something decent. A lot of people would say I'd be better to go, but I'm sticking out because I have in my mind what I'm looking for. I'm looking for something better and I'm not looking to go for just £35,000. North Lanarkshire Council is planning to pursue a compulsory purchase order on the property, but said its door remains open for further talks. A council spokesperson said, "We have been in dialogue with the owner for several years about this issue, and although we understand that there is a personal connection to the property, we simply cannot pay more for the property than it is worth. If the owner feels that the value he has been offered doesn't reflect the market value, then there are ways for a valuation to be negotiated on his behalf. We are keen to resolve this matter to ensure that he receives a fair deal and to support him to find alternative accommodation. We've discussed the option of other suitable places for him to stay, but he has refused each of them. He says he was open to further discussions, but plans to stick it out in his flat as long as it takes. I reckon the council is going to make a lot of money out of it, the development at the end of the day, so why not give me more?" Beyond the shores of the UK, a small community of devoted Conservative supporters have had their eyes glued to the twists and turns of the party's leadership contest. As paid-up Conservative members who joined at least 3 months before the ballot closes, they get a vote in the election to pick the next British Prime Minister. Under party rules, these overseas members do not need British citizenship to cast a ballot, nor the right to vote in a UK general election. Provided they paid their annual membership fee, they can have a role in shaping the political future of the UK, as Giuseppe Dottore did this month. He is part of a voter base that makes up about 1% of the party's estimated 160,000 strong membership. An Italian lawyer who has never been a resident or a citizen of the UK, Mr Dottore is one of the roughly 1,600 members of Conservatives abroad. It is the international branch of the party, with local groups in countries worldwide from Spain to Vietnam. Anyone living anywhere in the world is welcome to join Conservatives abroad from just £25 per year, its website advertises. Mr Dottore, 46, took that invitation in 2013 after making connections in the Conservative Party. Speaking from a Sicilian beach in southern Italy, where he lives and works, Mr Dottore said he has spent a lot of time in the UK and always felt close to the political agenda to the centre-right. While his legal practice is based in Sicily, he has a small office in London, where I go now and then. Before the COVID-19 pandemic paralysed international travel, Mr Dottore has been attending annual tours and conferences in London organised by Conservatives abroad since 2015. Now voting for the first time in the party's leadership election, he has been impressed by candidate Rishi Sunak's agenda of curbing inflation and energy bills. As for the tax-cutting programmes of his rival Liz Truss, it's a little bit of daydreaming, he said. Tory members have voted in new leaders since reforms to party rules were made in 1998. Mr Dottore was in favour of the process for electing leaders and preferred it to those in Italy, where everything is decided in party rooms. In the UK, others are less sanguine about the rules that gave Tory members like Mr Tory, and not the wider British public, a say in who succeeds Boris Johnson. Labour's deputy leader Angela Rayner said people will rightly ask why some Tory supporters who don't live in this country will have more say over the next Prime Minister than them. While families are sick with worry about how they'll pay the bills, the Tory contest is between two continuity candidates who have no answers to the problems facing our country. One senior Tory MP, when asked about the rules of leadership elections, was not even aware overseas members without British citizenship were entitled to vote. On top of voter eligibility, the size and the demographic profile of the Tory electorate have also been highlighted. In an interview with BBC News, David Mellor, who served in the cabinet of the former Tory Prime Minister John Major, asked why should 0.2% of the British public determine who the next Prime Minister is. Most of them white men of a certain age as well. I would be an ideal Conservative Party member, but I'm not proud of that fact. Mr Mellor left John Major's cabinet a year before Bo Vestergaard, another Conservatives abroad member, moved to the UK in 1993. The 50-year-old Dane who took up jobs in IT and in telecoms for BT came to the UK as his second home country. Nowadays he lives and works in Madrid, Spain, but still has a keen interest in the UK because he spent 25 years there. In that period, Danish law prevented him from applying for British citizenship without giving up his birthright nationality, something he was not prepared to do. Even so, he said, I'm a Conservative in my heart. I've been since David Cameron. I've met many Conservatives, both in the UK and Madrid, so it just seemed a natural thing to join the party officially. He did so in March this year, making him eligible to vote in the leadership election. Miss Truss got his vote because I really liked her as the foreign minister, and her plan to reverse the national insurance rise makes sense. Personally, he said, I was surprised that I was invited to vote, but I can see why, because it's not an election, is it? It's an internal leadership decision. Whether you're a British citizen or not probably doesn't matter. Another overseas member from Madrid, Nicola Spadavecchia Lirante, did not see a problem with the voting rules either. The 48-year-old who works in commercial real estate has been a member since last year and used to live in the UK with his British wife. They were considering moving back, he said, because he was not happy with how Spain's socialist-led coalition was running the country and prefer the Conservative government in England, adding, I am totally pro-Brexit. Justifying his vote to choose the next Tory leader, he said, I was working in England for 4.5 years and I paid taxes enough to have the right to vote. Perhaps eligibility to vote, Mr Vestergaard suggested, should be linked to the number of years that you've linked in the country. The BBC put this suggestion to the party and asked if I thought its voting rules were consistent with democratic norms. A party spokesperson said Conservatives abroad makes up less than 1% of our membership. All major parties have comparable organisations. It is true, like the Conservatives, the Liberal Democrats also give overseas members the right to vote in party leadership elections, whether they are British or not. Membership of Labour International, however, is conditional upon British citizenship. Foreign nationals may be a small proportion of Tory members who live abroad, but the fact they are allowed to vote at all was highlighted as a problem by two professors of British politics. One, Paul Webb of the University of Sussex, said it strikes me as highly anonymous that only people registered to vote in the UK are entitled to vote in general elections here, but foreign nationals can join Conservatives abroad and then vote in party leadership elections. Another, Tim Bale of the Queen Mary University of London, said that this could be a problem in principle and so definitely needs sorting out for next time. But in this context, it's difficult to believe that it will make any practical difference to the outcome. New students at the University of Glasgow will not be guaranteed accommodation this year. Students who live within commuting distance were automatically denied accommodation after receiving their results on Tuesday. Prospective students from further afield were also told they are no longer guaranteed a place to stay. The university blamed increased demand and a significant contraction in Glasgow's private rental market. The Students' Representative Council SRC claimed the university had accepted too many new students. The university said it had increased the number of rooms under its management by 25%. However, it could no longer guarantee newcomers a place to stay and strongly advised students against registering at the university unless they had secured a place to stay. English students will not find out whether they have a room in university accommodation until up to 10 working days after they receive their A-level results on the 18th of August. Despite increasing bed spaces, the university said the number of available private flats had decreased so much that there was still a gap between supply and demand. It blamed the shortage of private accommodation on changes to private rental tenancy law, as well as private landlords impacted by COVID restrictions, removing removing properties from the market. The university's student population has also grown each year. Alyssa Varley, 18, from Burton-on-Trent, has a conditional offer to study politics at Glasgow University. She told BBC Scotland, "I was really looking forward to going, but now it's looking like I might not be able to go at all. Either I withdraw my application, which would also withdraw my insurance option, or I take a risk and try to find somewhere private to stay in 2 weeks and possibly be left with no accommodation. I don't even know my results yet and whether I've got in, and then I have 2 weeks to find private accommodation. I can't commute 5.5 hours. I wish they would have told us sooner so I could have been in a better position to look for different accommodation, or I could have contacted a different university through clearing." Alyssa's father, Duncan, said if she gets in, that gives her 2 weeks to find a room in a market which Glasgow University admitted does not have much accommodation. There could be hundreds of other people looking for accommodation at the same time. It's hard to imagine that they couldn't foresee this. David Todd is based in Manchester and is set to start a PhD at the University of Glasgow. He told BBC Scotland, "I have been relying on postgraduate accommodation through the university to house me, as I can't really afford to live anywhere else. It's too expensive and I don't know anyone in Glasgow. I've been waiting an entire year to finally start, and now it's looking like I'll have to defer for a year or drop out completely. I just don't understand why it's taken this long for them to inform everyone about the accommodation." One English mother of a prospective student at the university's business school said if he meets his offer grades, he may have to decline the offer as he could end up with nowhere to live. "I think he'll probably decline the offer, as waiting up to 10 days to find out if he has accommodation is ridiculous. It's a real choice between waiting a year or going somewhere less good through clearing. He would not have applied to Glasgow Yes alone, accepted an offer, if we'd known accommodation was not guaranteed." A statement from the university's SRC. "The SRC is aware of the issues leading up to this point, and we'd like to express our disappointment at the university's approach. After the accommodation crisis across Glasgow last year, the SRC lobbied the university to commit to a moratorium on student numbers. Despite this, it now seems that over-recruitment has contributed to the creation of a similar situation." SRC President Rena Vare said the student council was very concerned about how the shortage would affect the experience of freshers. She added, "While we are aware this is a wider issue in the city, we try and push the university to communicate as early as possible on these issues. Our advice centre can support students with any concerns and help them consider their options." A University of Glasgow spokesperson said, "Regrettably, due to a significant contraction in the private rental market, demand for rooms continues to be substantially ahead of expectation, and we are no longer in a position to provide guaranteed university accommodation. Despite having increased the number of rooms under university management by 25% for the new academic year, we are having to prioritise accommodation for students who are unable to travel from home. We understand the concerns students have about finding accommodation for the new semester." The spokesperson added, "While unable to offer accommodation for students living within reasonable communicating distance, the university would continue to check regularly on the availability of private provider accommodation and share any updates." They also urged those looking for information and advice on finding private rented accommodation to contact the SRC's Advice Centre. US actress Anne Hitch is not expected to survive, her family has said, after a car crash earlier this week that left her vehicle engulfed in flames. She remains in a coma and had a severe anoxic brain injury when the brain is deprived of oxygen, they said. "We want to thank everyone for their kind wishes and prayers for Anne's recovery, and thank the dedicated staff and wonderful nurses." Her car crashed into a 2-story home in Los Angeles last week. Police said on Friday that preliminary blood tests had revealed the presence of drugs in her system, but extra testing was needed to rule out any substances given in a hospital. The Los Angeles Police Department told the PA news agency the incident was being investigated as a felony driving under the influence traffic collision. The 53-year-old mother of 2 was featured in films including Donnie Brasco, Cedar Rapids, and the 1998 Psycho remake. Her other film credits include I Know What You Did Last Summer, Prozac Nation, Volcano and 6 Days, 7 Nights, which saw her star opposite Harrison Ford. She was nominated for Outstanding Younger Actress in a Drama Series at the Daytime Emmy Awards in 1991 for her performance in Another World. Her other TV work includes appearances in Ally McBeal, Save Me Aftermath, Hung, Chicago PD, and Men in Trees. Hitch has also appeared on Dancing with the Stars, the US equivalent of Strictly Come Dancing. She is the former partner of talk show host Ellen DeGeneres, who she dated in the late 1990s. Hitch appeared in one episode of the Stars sitcom Ellen in 1998. According to the LA Fire Department, Hitch's vehicle erupted in heavy fire after it was driven 9.1 meters into the house, leaving the property uninhabitable. She is being cared for at the Grossman Burn Center at West Hills Hospital and is on life support to determine whether her organs are viable for donation, her family said in their statement. The government is considering a plan to provide more help to energy-intensive industries in the face of soaring electricity prices. The proposal could mean lower energy bills for firms in the steel, paper, glass, ceramics and cement sectors. In April, the government expanded its support for firms that use large amounts of electricity, but the business secretary said it was essential to explore ways of further cutting production costs. British manufacturers are the lifeblood of our economy and central to our plans to overcome this period of economic uncertainty, Kwasi Kwarteng said. With global energy prices at record highs, it is essential that we explore what more we can do to deliver a competitive future for those strategic industries. The government will launch a consultation on proposals that would remove altogether the obligation to pay certain environmental and policy costs. Director General of UK Steel Gareth Stace welcomed the consultation, saying it should provide some much needed relief in the face of extremely challenging circumstances. This announcement demonstrates that the UK government understands the challenges of British industry and continues to support steelmakers and steel communities across the country. Some support for these sectors is already in place. The Energy Intensive Industries Exemption Scheme grants firms 85% relief on a range of environmental and policy levies that are added to electricity bills. Under the new proposals, those energy-intensive firms would be 100% exempt from those additional costs. A separate scheme to support energy-intensive firms was expanded in April. The Department for Business, Energy and Industrial Strategy, BEIS, said that UK industrial electricity prices were higher than those of other countries, including in Europe, which could hamper investment, competition and the commercial viability for UK firms if no action was taken. There was a risk firms would relocate outside of the UK. Extending further support to industry in this way would help around 300 businesses, supporting 60,000 jobs in the UK's industrial heartlands. The family of a woman who killed herself after a secret relationship with a hospital nurse has been given permission to apply for a new inquest. Alison Bell attended Garland's mental health hospital in Carlisle in 1987 and became pregnant the following year. She died in 1991, aged 25. The nurse was later sacked, but no criminal charges were brought. Miss Bell's brother Tom Bell said he hoped a new inquest might get something close to justice. He said, "This isn't through the courts, this is an inquest, but it will be justice with a small j, and if that's the closest that we can get, and we've tried our best to get there, then I think that's worthy." Mr. Bell said he had spent thousands of hours with hundreds of freedom of information requests and more than 5,000 emails and letters in order to get justice for his sister. This is pushing and not stopping pushing until somebody finally opens the door. Miss Bell and the trainee male nurse kept the relationship secret, and when she became pregnant, she had an abortion. The relationship then ended, and in 1991, Miss Bell killed herself. An inquest, which did not have details of either the relationship or the pregnancy, returned an open verdict, but her family claim both had contributed to her death. The Attorney General's officer has now given permission for the family to seek a new inquest. A spokesperson said there was a reasonable prospect that the High Court would order one. Cumbria Police investigated in 2001, but the CPS, the Crown Prosecution Service, said there was not enough evidence. The case was reopened in 2017 and the nurse admitted the relationship, but claimed he had not known it was illegal. At that point, the CPS said that while it was satisfied a crime had been committed, it was no longer in the public interest to bring charges. Garland's closed in March 1999. The following year, a report found a whole systems failure had allowed a catalogue of patient abuse. Labour Shadow Minister David Lammy broke MP rules out for late declaration of financial interests, an inquiry found. Mr Lammy failed to register 16 interests on time, including payments for tickets to American football and boxes matches in London. Under Code of Conduct rules, MPs must register changes to their financial interests within 28 days. Parliamentary Standards Commissioner Catherine Stone was satisfied there was no deliberate intention to mislead. In her summary, Miss Stone said she opened an inquiry on the 16th of June after receiving an allegation that Mr Lammy was involved in 8 events between the 7th of October and the 15th of November 2021, which he failed to register within the set timeframe. She then found a further 7 interests had been registered late, taking the total to 15. The Labour MP for Tottenham then brought to Miss Stone's attention another single late declaration, which was added to the scope of the investigation. In the letter to the Commissioner, the Shadow Foreign Secretary offered his sincere apologies for the late submissions, saying he was thoroughly embarrassed by the breaches, which were genuine oversights resulting from administrative errors on my behalf. He told Ms Stone the register would now better fit on the agenda at his weekly team meetings, with his head of office and executive assistant having separate regular catch-ups on the issue. Mr Lammy also promised to set reminders in his team's calendar, check and submit standard returns. The Commissioner said based on the evidence she was satisfied there was no deliberate intention to mislead, but concluded Mr Lammy breached the code. This was as a result of an inattention to detail, she said, and found the breaches were inadvertent. She concluded that a referral to the Standards Committee was not necessary. The shortlist of UK cities that could host next year's Eurovision Song Contest has been revealed, with 7 locations in the running. Birmingham, Glasgow, Leeds, Liverpool, Manchester, Newcastle and Sheffield will vie to stage the event in May. 20 cities expressed an interest, the BBC said, and those not making the shortlists include London and Belfast. The UK was chosen to host the contest after organisers decided it could not be staged by Ukraine, the 2022 winners. UK singer Sam Ryder finished second at this year's contest in Turin, Italy. This decision to relocate it from Ukraine because of the ongoing war has led to a hotly contested selection process between UK cities that want to attract thousands of visitors and the attention of around 160 million TV viewers across the world. The BBC said the 7-strong shortlist was based on the city's ability to show they have the capacity, capability and experience to host an event of this scale and complexity. A statement added that the process was heavily weighted towards demonstrating past experience in hosting major international events, as well as being able to demonstrate their credentials in hosting a celebration of contemporary music. London would have met those criteria, but it didn't make the cut at a time when both the BBC and government are seeking to move events and opportunities outside the capital. Others to miss out include Aberdeen, Brighton, Bristol and Darlington. As it is, 5 shortlisted cities are in the north of England, with Glasgow representing Scotland and none further south than Birmingham. No Welsh cities bid, and Belfast was the only potential contender for Northern Ireland. The 7 remaining cities will be scored on a set of criteria, including having a suitable venue and sufficient space to deliver the requirements of the song contest, the commitment that can be made by a city or region to hosting the event, including the financial contribution, the strength of the cultural offer, which includes off-screen local and regional activity, as well as showcasing Ukrainian culture and music, and alignment with the BBC's strategic priorities as a public service broadcaster, such as providing value to all audiences and supporting the creative economy in the UK. The successful city will be chosen by the BBC and Eurovision organisers and will be announced in the autumn. Glasgow and Birmingham have been named as the bookmakers' favourites, while Glasgow and Manchester have proved the most popular in polls on Eurovision fan sites. Eurovision organisers say the host venue should accommodate about 10,000 spectators, be within easy access of an international airport, and have enough hotel accommodation for at least 2,000 delegates, journalists and spectators. A venue would need to be prepared for 6 to 8 weeks ahead of the song contest, meaning all potential locations need to move concerts and events that are already in their schedules. Former Ukrainian Eurovision winner Jamala said next year's contest would be the greatest Eurovision yet. Jamala won Eurovision in 2016 with her song 1944 and said the UK is the best place in the world to host the competition, despite initially hoping Ukraine would be able to host. For me, the UK is the best place in the world in music, she told the PA news agency. That's why Eurovision in your country is the best place for me. You are about music, you are full of different kinds of styles and genres. We'll briefly discuss the benefits of each of the cities. Birmingham, this was the last place to host Eurovision in the UK in 1998 and has just successfully hosted a major international event in the form of the Commonwealth Games. Its venue would be the Resorts World Arena, which has a capacity of 15,685, is next to Birmingham Airport, a train station and motorways, and is part of a complex including an exhibition centre and hotels. It hosted the star-studded concert for Ukraine back in March. Glasgow. The 14,300 capacity OVO Hydro Arena would be a fitting setting in some ways after being filmed for the exterior of the venue in Will Ferrell's 2020 Netflix movie Eurovision Song Contest, The Story of Fire Saga. The city centre venue is also next to exhibition centres that could be useful for facilities like a press centre and has a nearby station and hotels. It has previously hosted BBC Sports Personality of the Year, an event during the 2014 Commonwealth Games. Leeds. Leeds had hoped to be European Capital of Culture in 2023, but Brexit prevented UK cities from entering that particular contest. Undeterred, the city is ploughing on with staging its own Year of Culture. That means Eurovision could not come at a better time, says the council. The 13,781 capacity First Direct Arena is in the city centre, close to hotels and rail links. Liverpool, the home of the Beatles, has a rich musical history that attracts thousands of international visitors every year. Its past major events have included the MTV Europe Music Awards in 2008. Eurovision would be staged at the 11,000 capacity dockside M&S Bank Arena, which is next to a conference centre and near the city centre's hotels and rail links. Manchester. It has the biggest Ukrainian population outside of London and the biggest indoor venue in the UK in the 21,000 capacity AO Arena, which, as well as concerts, has hosted events like January's Big Night of Musicals, which was broadcast on BBC One, and major boxing bouts. It is also above a train station. Salford in Greater Manchester became the BBC's Eurovision HQ this year, with AJ Adudu delivering the UK scores from Media Centre. Newcastle. The city's 11,000 capacity Utilita Arena is close to the main train station and other central facilities. The council says the Town Moor and Exhibition Park, open space on the other side of the city centre, would be transformed into a Eurovision village. Sheffield. It's twinned with Ukrainian city Donetsk, and its 13,600 capacity Utilita Arena is outside the city centre, but it has a tram and motorway links. It was built to host the World Student Games, hosted the 2008 BBC Sports Personality of the Year, and in 2014 was the media centre and the finish line for the Tour de France Grand Depart. UK Culture Secretary Nadine Dorries said the country was determined to deliver a competition which reflects Ukraine's rich culture and creativity. Congratulating the shortlisted cities, she said no matter which one is chosen, it will be a fantastic event to make both the UK and Ukraine proud. The BBC's Director of Unscripted Content, Kate Phillips, said we are committed to delivering a truly unique song contest that celebrates wonderful Ukraine and champions British music and creativity in all its diversity. Nurseries could be forced to close if funding does not keep up with costs, a childcare association has warned. The National Day Nurseries Association, NDNA, said providers in nearly half of Scottish councils are still waiting to find out their funding, just days before the new school year. At least 15 councils are yet to decide on the hourly rates they'll pay childcare providers from next week. Only 2 councils have plans to keep up with the current rate of inflation. Jonathan Broadbury, NDNA Director of Policy, told BBC Scotland that funding was not keeping pace with the rising cost of living. He added that amounts to a real terms cut, so for those nurseries it will be where savings can be made. Ultimately, what we're worried about is if this goes on and on, nurseries will be in a position where they might have to close. The NDNA asked all of Scotland's 32 councils what their rates for funded free childcare places for 3 to 5 and eligible 2-year-olds would be. 27 councils responded, with 15 saying they didn't know yet. Of the 12 councils that confirmed funding, 4 are not increasing their rates from August last year. Just 2 councils, Angus and Stirling, are making increases that keep pace with the current rate of inflation. Susan McGee of Flexible Childcare Services Scotland says it is difficult to offer childcare services without knowing levels of funding. The group has nurseries across Scotland. It's almost like asking someone to sell something in a shop and not being able to understand what to charge for that till further down the line, she said. As an organisation, we employ around 175 to 180 people. How can we keep the level of income coming in to pay those salaries at a fair rate and offer fair working hours? All of those things that as a good employer we want to be able to do to provide the right quality experience for the children within our services with the right resources, right employment, right training for the team. The NDNA said the situation puts pressure on nurseries to generate income elsewhere. This could include increasing fees for younger children who aren't covered by the funding policy, or for extra hours that parents might be buying outside of funded childcare. NDNA Scotland Chief Executive Penema Tanaku said she had never seen a picture with this much uncertainty. She warned that if the childcare sector was to continue delivering the Scottish Government's 1,140 free childcare hours policy, councils that had set funding at the same as last year need to urgently review their hourly rate. With rising costs, these rates are nowhere near sustainable, and the sector cannot be expected to deliver places at a loss. Scottish Conservative spokeswoman for children and the young people, Megan Gallagher, said it was unacceptable that so many councils were in the dark over the rates they could be paying to childcare providers so close to the start of the new school year. The start findings show how nurseries in Scotland are being left in limbo. Local government body COSLA said rate setting was a matter for each individual council. A spokesperson said councils are in the process of working through necessary governance processes to set rates, recognising the need for this information to be made available to providers as quickly as possible. All councils are working with constrained budgets, made worse this year by rising inflation and soaring energy costs, requiring all service areas to revisit budgets as a matter of urgency. This has undoubtedly affected some councils' rate-setting decisions. A Scottish Government spokesperson said joint Scottish Government and COSLA guidance is clear that rates should reflect the cost of delivery, provide scope for reinvestment, and enable private and third sector services to pay at least the real living wage to staff. An Italian man has been rescued from a collapsed tunnel near the Vatican, and police suspect he could have been burrowing his way into a bank. He is now recovering in hospital after firefighters spent 8 hours digging him out from under a road, but he may now need to dig himself out of further trouble, as police have arrested him and a second man for resisting a public official. Police believe he may have been part of a gang attempted to break into a bank. We are still investigating, and we do not exclude that they are thieves. It is one of the theories, a police spokesman told the AFP news agency. The pair were also detained for damaging public property. Local media believe the motive to be clear, noting that the tunnel was found near a bank shortly before the 15th of August, long weekend, when much of the city empties. The whole gang read the headline in the Corriere della Sera daily. A walrus that has become a popular attraction in the Oslo fjord is being endangered by too much attention and could even be put down for her own good, authorities say. The walrus, nicknamed Freya, rose to fame after clambering onto boats to sunbathe, sometimes sinking them, but the Norwegian Fisheries Ministry says people are getting too close, putting her and themselves at risk. It is considering measures including euthanasia if crowds persist. Despite repeated warnings, people continue to gather close to the 1,300-pound walrus. Its statement included a photograph of a large group of people, including children, standing within touching distance of the animal. Spokesperson Nadia Gianni said authorities had witnessed several potentially dangerous incidents in the last week, including people swimming with the walrus, approaching with their children to take photographs, and throwing things at the animal. The fact that the walrus has become an attraction escalates the need for further measures. Our biggest fear is that people could get hurt. The police have been told about these incidents. The need to take further measures is also for Freya's welfare, which has clearly deteriorated. The walrus is not getting enough rest, and a vet who has assessed her believes she is stressed. The Fisheries Ministry is closing and monitoring her in a patrol boat. It is considering further measures, including approving a controlled operation to put the animal down. Other options include moving the walrus from the Oslo fjord. There is currently no timeline for when a final decision will be taken. Ms. Gianni added, in the meantime, the distance recommendations and clarifications about not swimming with the walrus are repeated. We would again strongly recommend that the public keep their distance where the walrus who has been observed and not bathe with it. It is for one's own safety and with animal welfare in mind. Freya, who was first spotted in the Norwegian capital in mid-July, was named after the Norse goddess of beauty and love. A protected species, walruses normally live further north in the Arctic. They do not usually attack humans, but there have been some rare incidents. At a wildlife park in China in 2016, a tourist and a zookeeper were killed by a walrus. The tourist had reportedly been taking selfies with the creature when he was grabbed and pulled underwater, while the keeper went in to rescue him, but was also pulled under. A woman assaulted by her politician husband says she is appalled and disappointed that Plaid Cymru has reinstated him as an MP for the party. The party returned the whip to Jonathan Edwards on Wednesday after legal advice and following a row about whether he should remain an independent. His wife, Emma Edwards, told BBC Wales it sends a message that survivors of domestic abuse don't matter. Plaid Cymru and Mr. Edwards have declined to comment. His wife said she now regretted a statement issued on her behalf in the wake of the incident, which she said was drafted by a press officer for the MP. Miss Edwards said that she married her husband in November 2012. They are in the process of getting divorced. In May 2020, I called the police after being assaulted by my husband at our home. Mr. Edwards subsequently accepted a police caution. His wife said at the time I was in shock, denial, and I was hopeful that we would be able to reconcile. Even though Jonathan attended an online domestic abuse course, he did not accept responsibility for what happened, minimising the incident. This meant that was not going to be any reconciliation. I was perhaps naive to think that there could be. She said the statement issued at the time, which she had accepted her husband's apology, was drafted for me by Jonathan's press officer at the time, and I was told that it would be the best way to stop it being a story. I now regret saying those words, as they have been used to excuse Jonathan's actions. I have since learned that he is presenting himself as the victim in all of this, and this is why I'm now seeking to set the record straight. I am appalled and disappointed that the party I was until recently a member of has accepted a domestic abuser to represent them as an MP. This sends the message that women don't matter and that survivors of domestic abuse don't matter. I always believed Plaid Cymru to be better than this. Until now, I have maintained silence and am not a political person, and I do not seek publicity. I cannot stand by and watch the truth being distorted as it has been. Splits in Plaid emerged after a disciplinary panel gave the go-ahead for him to have his membership back in July. At that time, a majority of the National Executive Committee, Plaid's ruling body, recommended that the MP for Carmarthen East and Dinworth should be refused entry to the Westminster group. On Wednesday, Plaid said it reinstated Mr Edwards, ending his spell as an independent MP, following that what it described as a procedural advice. BBC Wales told the party has been informed it would be unlawful for Mr Edwards to be kept out of the Westminster group. Mr Edwards declined to comment, but issued a statement on Wednesday expressing deep remorse for his behaviour. He said the past 2 years has been a period of deep reflection, in which I enrolled on a domestic violence awareness course, which has helped me understand the impact my actions have on others. Plaid said this week that the NEC would review the party's processes to identify reasons and lessons that can be learned. It said it would identify the steps required for the party to be truly free from a culture of misogyny, and to actively and meaningfully promote, defend and extend women's participation in Plaid Cymru and wider politics. A cyber attack on a major IT provider of the NHS has been confirmed as a ransomware attack. Advanced, which provides digital services like patient check-in and NHS 111, says it may take 3 to 4 weeks to fully recover. Ransomware hackers take control of IT systems, steal data and demand a payment from victims to recover. The NHS insists that disruptions are minimal, but Advanced would not say whether NHS data has been stolen. The Birmingham-based firm says it first spotted the hack at 7 AM British Standard Time on the 4th of August and immediately took steps to contain the hackers. It is now working to restore services. The company refused to say if it was in negotiations with hackers or paying a ransom to them. In a statement it said, "We are rebuilding and restoring impacted systems in a separate and secure environment." An NHS England spokesperson said while Advanced has confirmed that the incident impacting its ransomware, the NHS has tried and tested contingency plans in place, including robust defences to protect our own networks, as we work with the National Cybersecurity Centre to fully understand the impact. The public should continue to use NHS services as normal, including NHS 111 for those who are unwell, although some people will face longer waits than usual. As ever, if it is an emergency, please call 999. An NHS psychiatrist who wished to remain anonymous told the BBC the attack left his team making clinical decisions nearly blind. If a new patient came to us, we weren't able to read their history or know very much about them. The local trust are doing their best at setting up an alternative system. They've got a way that we can look at some historical notes now and have set up another system to mean that we can input new notes. But there's still basically a week's worth of notes that we can't access. We've been told to be ready for it to not be up and running for who knows how long. At the end of last week, family doctors in London were warned by NHS England they could see an increased number of patients sent to them by NHS 111 because of this significant technical issue, industry magazine Pulse reported. Advanced initially said that only a small number of servers had been affected and that it might be able to recover in a week. Products which have been affected include Adestra, which is used by NHS 111 service, and Kerecis and Carrot Notes, which provide the backbone for care home services like patient notes and visitor bookings. The National Cyber Security Centre, which is part of GCHQ, says it is working with Advanced to help it recover. A spokesman said ransomware is the key cyber threat facing the UK, and all organisations should take immediate steps to limit risk by following our advice on how to put in place robust defences to protect their networks. Ransomware hackers are usually financially motivated and part of large professionally run criminal gangs that target companies and demand hundreds of thousands, sometimes millions of pounds in ransom in the form of cryptocurrencies like Bitcoin. While it is hard to trace where the gangs are based, analysis suggests that 74% of all money made through ransomware attacks in 2021 went to Russian-linked hackers. Members of a teaching union have warned of a potential vote on strike action after its members in Wales rejected a below-inflation pay rise. It was announced last month that teacher salaries will rise by 5% in September. NASUWT surveyed its members in Wales and said 78% believe the pay award was inadequate. Inflation, the rate at which prices are rising, currently stands at 9.4% and is predicted to reach 13% in October. There are 26,600 teachers in Wales, with the average pay at £39,009. In July, Education Minister Jeremy Miles accepted the recommendations of an independent pay review body that salaries should rise by 5%. That would put starting salaries for new teachers at £28,866, with those of more experienced classroom teachers rising to £44,450. But a NASUWT, a TUC-affiliated trade union representing teachers and head teachers in the UK, called for 12% in 2022 to 2023 and has threatened to ballot for strike action in the autumn unless there is a further increase. Of the nearly 700 teachers who responded to its survey, the union also said 70% disagreed with or were angry with the Welsh Government's offer. The Welsh Government's pay offer falls way short of what teachers are demanding following a decade of real terms pay cuts and the current cost of living crisis, said Neil Butler, a NASUWT's official in Wales. This pay offer takes the teacher pay gap since 2010 to 22.4%. The members have again told us that they reject the imposition of a below-inflation pay award. Salaries could go up by 3.5% in the second year, subject to a review. Dr. Patrick Roach, the General Secretary, added, "Ministers have refused to respond to our calls for proper negotiations, and once again we are calling on ministers to get around the table to find a solution." However, in the event that there is no improvement, the union remains committed to balloting its members in the autumn term industrial action. Mr. Miles previously said he was limited in how far he could go in raising pay and criticised the UK government's funding settlement for Wales. A similar pay, 5% for most teachers, has been offered in England. In a previous response to Welsh Government criticism, the UK government said the Welsh Government has had more funding than at any other time since devolution began. Families searching for somewhere to rent have said they are left feeling helpless because of high prices, lack of supply and discrimination. Emma Kerris Williams, 36, from Lalando, Conwy County, said she faced being homeless by the end of September. Sarah Hobday, 32, from Cardiff, said she had never felt so low and could not find anywhere because she was having a baby. Shelter Simru said discrimination was seen blatantly across Wales. The Welsh Government said more affordable homes would be available in the private sector during its next term, and any agent or landlord who unfairly discriminated against tenants faced losing their licence. Mother of two, Miss Williams, said she felt physically helpless as she faced eviction from her rental property in September. She and her partner Lee were handed their eviction notice by their landlord of 11 years in July, a 3-bedroom house they pay £550 a month for. We quickly realised that there wasn't anywhere the prices were absolutely ridiculous. I think there was one that was £1,600 a month, and there are ones that are like £2,300 in this area. All my wages would be gone, and the everything else, bills and living costs, would be my partner's wages, and then what? We'll be left with nothing. Miss Williams considered moving to England in the hope that prices would be cheaper, but her daughter April lives with unilateral cerebellar hyperplasia, a rare neurological condition, and the last thing I want is to move my 5-year-old from her school, while her son Theo, 14, is starting his GCSEs in September. I've tried everything. I've spoken to the homelessness prevention team, filled out a form to say that what my situation is. I've spoken to the council, the estate agents. I feel physically helpless. Miss Hobday and her partner Steve were told last December that their family would need to leave their rented property as the landlord wanted to sell. After 8 months of searching, Miss Hobday said being told that having a baby was putting them at a disadvantage was the worst part. If we did manage to get a viewing, we put in an application, and the application was very often not accepted on the basis that we have a child, which I find absolutely mind-blowing that it's even legal to do that. I've never been so rejected in all my life. The impact on my mental health was so much so I don't think I can even understand how bad it could get. Why is the rental market so competitive? House prices are at their highest ever in Wales, £240,000 on average according to Principality Building Society's latest figures. That means that more and more people are being forced to try and rent, but because of the rapid increase in the number of people searching, there are not enough places to meet the demand. In addition, many landlords in Wales have decided to sell their properties because of new legislation coming into force in December. Thomas Williams, director of Maison Estate Agents, says he has seen a big change since the pandemic, with high demand leading to people being ready to pay about asking prices, leading to greater competition with landlords facing difficult decisions and people missing out. We would market a property for roughly a week to 2 weeks on the past for a rental property. Now we're finding that we're getting enough inquiries after advertising for just half a day to a day. Mr. Williams added that in the market they were in, they are not allowed to discriminate. We do work very hard in order to make sure that we do it in in a fair basis, but unfortunately there is very often very little to distinguish people, which means that our decision is made very hard. Hedda Gregory from Shelter Shimru said, "We see there are many more people wanting to rent privately, but unable to do so because there's a competition war going on. We've seen in research that we did last year, about 75,000 people were discriminated against when they tried to find their current home. This was because of their ethnicity, gender, sexual orientation, nationality, religion, or disability. We also regularly see discrimination in the form of unlawful no DSS policies, which indirectly discriminate against women and disabled people, and even discrimination based on people having pets or children." The Welsh Government said every landlord and agent in Wales must sign up to the Rent Smart Wales Code of Practice, which clearly states that any prospective or existing tenant must not be discriminated against. Any landlord or agent who unfairly discriminates against tenants risks losing their licence. Our leasing scheme, Wales, will increase access to affordable homes in the private rented sector and will provide 20,000 low-carbon social homes for rent during this government term. England's health chiefs say they will create an extra 7,000 beds to tackle substantial pressures this winter. It comes after government scientific advisors warn that high numbers of beds may be needed for respiratory patients. The extra beds will include more temporary units at hospital sites and 2,500 virtual ward spaces with patients monitored at home. The NHS is already facing intense pressure. According to official figures for July, nearly 30,000 patients waited more than 12 hours to be admitted to hospital. July also saw the highest number of ambulance call-outs for life-threatening conditions since records began, and only 40% of patients were able to leave hospital when ready to do so. NHS chiefs say this could be the first winter where there is likely to be combined pressures from COVID and flu. There are around 91,000 adult beds in general wards in England. In a letter to all NHS hospital trusts, NHS bosses say extra measures for this winter will include more call handlers working on NHS 111 and 999 calls to deal with higher demand, mental health professionals deployed with social care so people can leave hospital safely and promptly, health and well-being coaches available for patients at some GP practices. Professor Sir Stephen Powis, NHS National Medical Director, said winter is always a busy period for the NHS, and this is the first winter where we are likely to see combined pressures from COVID and flu. So it is right that we prepare as early as we can for the additional demand that we know we will face. He added, "As ever, it is vital that the public continues to use NHS services in the usual way, including using 999 in an emergency and using NHS 111 online for other health issues. And when the time comes, book in for your COVID and flu vaccine if you are eligible." Sir Andrew Goddard, President of the Royal College of Physicians, welcomed the additional measures but said extra staff were key. He said, "Without any significant government intervention to retain and rapidly increase the workforce, any plans will fall short. They all need people to deliver them, and it's people we're really lacking." Morrisons is to temporarily stop selling disposable barbecue in all its stores because of the heat wave. It joins other supermarket chains, including Sainsbury's and Tesco, which have dropped the product during the current spell of dry weather. Fire brigades have warned of the risk of blazes in tinderbox conditions. The Met Office's Fire Severity Index, which assesses how severe a blaze could become, is currently very high for most of England and Wales. On Friday, parts of southwest, southern, central and eastern England were moved to drought status. In March, Morrisons announced the removal of disposable barbecues from its stores within 1 mile of national parks to help prevent wildfires. On Friday, the supermarket said in a statement, "In light of the long dry spell in the UK, this summer we are temporarily removing disposable barbecues from all stores until further notice." Sainsbury's said its policy was a precautionary measure, but did not say how long it would continue. Tesco said the move was temporary, and once weather conditions allow disposable barbecues, they will be made available again. Last week, Marks & Spencer said it wanted to help protect open spaces and reduce the risk of fires by removing the single-use portable barbecues from sale, while Ocado also took the same step. Aldi and Waitrose had already stopped sales back in March due to the burden on the environment more generally, including the impact of the single-use plastic, metal and card. Co-op says it does not sell disposable barbecues close to UK national parks. The UK is in the middle of its second heatwave this summer. In July, temperatures broke records, rising above 40 centigrade and are forecast to hit 37 centigrade again in some parts of the UK over the next 4 days. Fire services are warning of tinderbox conditions and have asked people not to use barbecues in higher risk places such as balconies and on dry grass after a steep increase in the number of call-outs. A man was stranded at Gatwick Airport for more than 6 hours after a meet and greet company lost his car keys. After a flight from Venice on Thursday, Alex Jones was expected to drive home to Coventry after paying a premium. Instead, he and a number of families were left waiting by Go Meet and Greet, said Mr. Jones, who is still still awaiting news of his car. The BBC has made several attempts to contact the firm for comment. Gatwick Airport said it had no relationship with the company. Mr. Jones arrived back in the UK at about 11 AM British Standard Time, with plans to reunite with a friend who was on leave from the Royal Navy. However, he described enduring several hours of miscommunication and mismatched stories as to why his car had not arrived. Mr. Jones claims the member of staff from the valet company told him, "I won't lie to you, we have misplaced your key." He said he was left at the airport with other travellers, their families and young children, adding he did not know where his car was. "It's disgraceful from everyone involved. It was supposed to be convenient and all it has done is ruin my day." A Gatwick Airport spokesperson said, "We are sorry to hear that more of our passengers have had a poor experience with meet and greet parking firms operating from the airport. Gatwick Airport has no relationship with these companies, and any passengers affected by their actions should contact Trading Standards, which should be able to investigate the matter." Go Meet and Greet eventually provided a taxi to take him back to his Coventry home, but Mr. Jones said he had no idea what will happen to my car. "I don't know if or when I will get it back." A 6-year-old boy has told of his delight at becoming the new voice of Blackpool Tower. Charlie is the voice in the lift, sharing facts and figures about the famous attraction on the Lancashire town seafront. His mother Wendy said he absolutely adores the tower and the passion that he shows for it is amazing. Charlie, who spent time in a recording studio to capture his wise words, visitors said he was excited. The tower's operations director Kenny Mew said they were not looking for a new voice until they heard about tower superfan Charlie. He said his school reached out to me and said they had this young boy who was passionate about Blackpool Tower and had actually recorded the lift speech. I was thinking to myself, how's he done that? I played it back and he had the speech word for word that we'd had recorded already in the lift, and it just sounded amazing. And we thought, do you know what? We're going to give Charlie the opportunity to do it. He was absolutely brilliant. He's done an amazing job and we're really proud of what he's done. Charlie's mother continued, "We are the proudest parents. He's just taken it all in his stride. His last topic at school was about Blackpool Tower, so he knew all the facts and he was firing them out across the classroom. He loves it and he's been like that since he was very little, really, since we first took him up there. From the minute he could walk, really." As well as the lift, there are plans afoot for Charlie to lend his voice to other areas in the future. Samsung heir Lee Jae-yong, convicted of bribery and embezzlement in 2017, has been granted a special presidential pardon. One of South Korea's most powerful white-collar criminals, Lee was twice imprisoned for bribing a former president. South Korea's government justified the move, saying the de facto leader of the country's biggest company was needed back at the helm to spearhead economic recovery post-pandemic. This marks another swing in the struggle over how the country is run that has raged since mass protests took over Seoul 6 years ago and ousted a president from office. Lee's crimes were directly tied up in the corruption scandal that led to the imprisonment of former President Park Geun-hye in office from 2013 to 2017. The Crown Prince of Samsung, as he was dubbed by protesters, paid $8 million or £6.6 million in bribes to President Park and her associate to secure support for a merger opposed by shareholders that would shore up his control of his family's empire. When it was revealed, millions of South Koreans turned out at candlelit protests every weekend in the 2016-2017 winter, demanding an end to Park's government and the stitch-up between politics and business. Korea's parliament impeached Park and she was imprisoned in 2017 for 25 years. Lee, who is also known as Jae Lee in the West, was jailed a year later for offences including embezzling company funds to buy a £650,000 horse for the president's friend's daughter. A new president, Moon Jae-in, swept into office with a mandate to clean up the mess, but he failed to make much headway. In his last days as president, he granted a pardon to his predecessor. Now, 8 months later, under another new president, Samsung's chief has also received the same clemency. For those who have been fighting against corruption, it's a dispiriting blow. It is a setback and it means Korea retreats to the time before the candlelit demonstrations, said Sang-in Park, an economic and industrial policy professor at Seoul National University. Lee's case reaffirms popular conception that business leaders are untouchable and above the law. In Korea, giant conglomerate dominates the economy, with the top 10 accounting for about 80% of GDP. Known as chaebols, they are family-controlled empires which provide a span of services. LG, Hyundai, Lotte and SK are among them, but Samsung is the biggest and most powerful of them all. As the world's largest smartphone maker, it's a global electronics brand, but at home it does much more. Hospitals, hotels, insurance plans, billboards, shipyards, and even theme parks. Samsung and other chaebols are so omnipresent they're known as octopus firms, says Professor Young Kyung Hee Lee, a political sociologist at the University of Toronto. And those tentacles have long wormed their way into the highest investment levels of Korean politics. Professor Lee was at the 2016 protests and saying most of the anger was directed at President Park's personal actions, but she said Labour activists and others strove to highlight the chaebols' outsized influence on government. Chaebols were heavily supported by the government after the Korean War. They were given cheap electricity and tax incentives, there was a Buy Korea policy, and even help in suppressing union movements. But the resulting monopolies also crushed competition, stifled labour movements, and their practices spawned decades of bribery and corruption cases. In many cases, Professor Lee said executives were given light or suspended sentences. In some cases, judges said the economy might suffer if a chaebol leader was taken out of action. Mr. Lee's own father, Lee Kun-hee, was convicted of bribery and fraud in the 1990s when he was Samsung chairman, but he didn't serve a single day of jail time. So in 2017, when his son was hauled away to a cell on a 5-year sentence, activists hoped the case would make a turning point. Celebration, however, was short-lived. Lee's court battle dragged on for years, with twists and turns worthy of the most dramatic Korean serials. An appeals court released him, a higher court then ordered a retrial, at which he was again found guilty and jailed. But just a few months into his second jail term, the Moon government released him on parole, saying it was in the national interest. Since then, he has returned as the public face of Samsung in May, greeting US President Joe Biden on a trade visit to South Korea. Lee still faces criminal allegations of rigging company valuations, accounting fraud, and making Samsung business decisions in breach of his sentence conditions. Clemency means he will be able to fully resume his executive responsibilities. It follows a pattern of convicted chaebol leaders having their slates wiped clean. When it comes to formal power, there's the President's office and the National Assembly, they're making the laws. But when it comes to political influence or cultural influence, or even how people think about the importance of chaebol in Korean society, it's really down to a coalition of conservative political and business elites who will have interests with each other. The government's pardon of Lee rests on the argument that chaebol leaders are needed for the economy, but numerous economists have pointed out this isn't backed up by hard proof. The pardoning of chaebol controllers has not contributed to economic growth or turnaround historically. Analysts say Samsung has fared perfectly well while Lee has been in and out of prison. Reform advocates say South Korea, where growth has been slowing for years, also needs to end its dependence on chaebols. Several studies have shown that it's getting harder to get the trickle-down effect. It's time to move away from the old notion that any illegal acts done by chaebols are forgivable if they do their jobs, says Ro Jong-hwa, a lawyer from an advocacy group Solidarity for Economic Reform. Still, the dismay among critics over Lee's pardoning is not shared among the broader South Korean public. A recent public poll recorded 70% support for the pardon. How do you explain this support? The desire to tackle corruption and chaebol influence remains, experts say, but is mingled with fear and concerns over a looming recession and residual pride over Samsung representing Korea on the world stage. There's a core belief that if Samsung does well, Korea does well, and Koreans have lived with this myth for so many decades, it's really hard for ordinary citizens to break out of it. Right now, amid an economic downturn, people want to see some concrete sign that we are moving forward, and Lee's release is a sign of that. Johnson & Johnson will stop making and selling its talc-based baby powder around the world from next year. The announcement comes more than 2 years after the healthcare giant ended sales of the product in the US. J&J faces tens of thousands of lawsuits from women who allege its talcum powder contained asbestos and caused them to develop ovarian cancer. But the company reiterated its view that decades of independent research shows the product is safe to use. As part of a worldwide portfolio assessment, we have made the commercial decision to transition to an all cornstarch-based baby powder portfolio. The firm added that cornstarch-based baby powder is already sold in countries around the world. At the same time, J&J reiterated its position that its baby powder is safe to use. Our position on the safety of our cosmetic talc remains unchanged. We stand firmly behind the decades of independent scientific analysis by medical experts around the world that confirms talc-based Johnson's baby powder is safe, does not contain asbestos, and does not cause cancer. In 2020, J&J said it would stop selling its talc baby powder in the US and Canada because demand had fallen in the wake of what it called misinformation about the product's safety amid a number of legal cases. At the time, the firm said it would continue to sell its talc-based baby powder in the UK and the rest of the world. The company faces lawsuits from consumers and their survivors who claim J&J's talc products cause cancer due to contamination with asbestos. Talc is mined from the earth and is found in seams close to that of asbestos, which is a material known to cause cancer. A 2018 investigation by the Reuters news agency claimed that J&J knew for decades that asbestos was present in its talc products. Reuters said that internal company records, trial testimony, and other evidence showed that from at least 1971 to the early 2000s, J&J's raw talc and finished baby powders sometimes tested positive for small amounts of asbestos. In response to evidence of asbestos contamination presented in courtrooms, media reports, and to US lawmakers, the firm has repeatedly denied the allegations. In October, J&J created a subsidiary, LTL Management, assigning its talc claims to it. It later placed it into bankruptcy, which paused the pending lawsuits. Before the bankruptcy filing, the company faced costs from £2.87 billion in verdicts and settlements, including one in which 22 women were awarded a judgment of more than $2 billion. In April, a shareholder proposal calling for an end to global sales of the talc baby powder failed. Johnson's baby powder has been sold for almost 130 years and became a symbol of the company's family-friendly image. Baby powder is used for preventing nappy rash and for cosmetic uses, including as a dry shampoo. The death of Archie Battersby, who was at the centre of a legal battle between his parents and doctors, was a tragedy, a coroner said. The inquest into the death of the 12-year-old from Southend-on-Sea, Essex, was opened on Friday at Essex Coroner's Court. It heard he died of a brain injury secondary to strangulation. Lincoln Brooks, senior coroner for Essex, adjourned the inquest until the 7th of February 2023. The hearing was told Archie was found unresponsive on the 7th of April. Paramedics who attended found him in cardiac arrest and tried to resuscitate him. He was taken to Southend University Hospital before he was transferred to Royal London Hospital, where he died on the 6th of August after his life support was withdrawn. The inquest heard the cause of death was catastrophic hypoxic ischemic brain injury secondary to strangulation. The coroner's court was told the purpose of the inquest was to learn who died and where, when, and how they came about their death, with no one being on trial. Mr. Brooks said Archie's death was a tragedy and expressed his condolences to his loved ones. Archie's parents had battled through the courts to continue his life-sustaining treatment, but judges ruled continuing was futile. His family then wanted Archie to be moved to a hospice, but the High Court, on hearing medical evidence, ruled he was too unstable to be transported by ambulance. Archie died at 12:15 British Standard Time, surrounded by friends and family. His mum, Holly Dance, said he was such a beautiful little boy, and he fought right until the very end, and I'm so proud to be his mum. They say all is fair in love and war, but one company has dropped its plans to trademark the Welsh word for love after a backlash. Candle maker Fizzy Foam registered Cariad, the Welsh word for love. It stopped anyone making similar products using those terms, but the Intellectual Property Office has confirmed that the firm has voluntarily given up the rights to the trademarks. Fizzy Foam previously said the trademarks only applied to candles. IPO spokeswoman said the marks belonging to Fizzy Foam Ltd have been voluntarily surrendered. This means the owner has voluntarily given up the rights in the trademarks. The word Hiraeth loosely translates to longing, and others businesses were definitely longing for this move. Owner of Bridgend candle making business Gwenny Amanda James previously said the move would have a significant impact on her. I have a range of candles with Cariad on them. I wouldn't be able to sell those, she told the BBC. I don't think anyone has the right to say that they own these words. These words are unique to our language, to our heritage, to our culture. Speaking after awarding the trademarks, the IPO said all three met the criteria defined in law and anyone was free to challenge the decision. Tom Tugendhat raised more than £120,000 to fund his unsuccessful bid for the Conservative leadership, the latest register of MPs' interest shows. This trust is yet to reveal who has donated to her campaign, while Rishi Sunak has so far declared only the use of some office space. MPs have 28 days from accepting a donation to declare it to the Parliamentary Standards Commissioner. The latest update of the register covers the period up to the 8th of August. Mr Tugendhat, who finished 5th in the leadership contest, received £42,673 from a company called Policy Focus Ltd, founded less than 2 weeks before the campaign began. It is owned by property developers Christian Sweeting and Robert Luck. Another £50,000 came from long-time Tory donor Ian McCurgy and £25,000 from Beacon Rock Ltd, owned by former Tory Treasurer Sir Michael Davis. Business consultancy Invest UK Group donated £6,000. Updates to the register of MPs' financial interests also show Mr Sunak Sunak received the use of office space in Westminster worth £3,195 from Bridge Consulting Ltd. Bridge Consulting was co-founded by former Conservative marketing boss Will Harris and housed the former Chancellor's campaign team for 2 weeks in July. Attorney General Suella Braverman, who was eliminated one round before Mr. Tugendhat, received £10,000 from a company owned by a prominent climate change skeptic, Terence Mordaunt. Mr. Mordaunt owns Bristol Port and chaired the Global Warming Policy Foundation between 2019 and 2021. It has been vocal in opposing policies to tackle climate change, such as the net zero target, and was sanctioned by the Charity Commission in 2014 for failing to adhere to rules on balance and neutrality. Former Equalities Minister Kemi Badenoch raised £12,500 for her campaign. Some £10,000 came from Longgrow Capital, owned by technology investor Dave McLean. Former leadership hopefuls Penny Mordaunt, Nadeem Zahawi, Jeremy Hunt and Sajid Javid have yet to declare any financial support for their campaigns. Along with frontrunner Ms Truss, they provided no updates relating to their leadership bids in the latest version of the Register of Interests. Tesla boss Elon Musk has sold another 7.92 million shares in the electric car maker worth about £5.7 billion. The sales took place after the firm's annual shareholder meeting last week, regulatory filings show. Mr Musk says he needs the money in case he is forced to buy Twitter for $44 billion. The multi-billionaire is currently embroiled in a legal battle with the social media platform after saying last month he would pull out of a deal to buy it. The latest transactions were carried out on the 5th, the 8th and the 9th of August, according to 6 filings with the US Securities and Exchange Commission. After news of the share sale was made public, Mr Musk responded to a tweet asking whether he had finished selling Tesla shares with yes, adding that he needed the money in case he was forced to buy Twitter and was unable to secure some of the funding for the deal. It is important to avoid an emergency sale of Tesla stock, he said. Asked by another user whether he would be buying Tesla shares again if the Twitter takeover does not take place, Mr Musk also responded yes. In July, Mr Musk said he planned to walk away from his bid to buy Twitter, prompting the company to sue him. The world's richest person has accused the company of withholding information about fake accounts. Last month, a US judge ruled that Twitter's lawsuit against Mr Musk should go to trial in October. Twitter hopes that the court will order Mr Musk to complete the takeover at the agreed price of $54.2 per share. Mr Musk has countersued Twitter, although the details of that lawsuit have not yet been made public. Also in July, Twitter said that between April and June, it had spent $33 million on the proposed deal. It also said its number of monthly daily users had risen to 237 million, but it reported a net loss of $270 million, which was worse than expected. Meanwhile, Tesla revealed last month that it had offloaded 75% of its Bitcoin, which was worth about $2 billion at the end of 2021. The company made waves last year when it revealed a major investment in the world's biggest cryptocurrency. Tesla said it brought traditional currencies with the $936 million proceeds of its Bitcoin sales.